Good morning, and welcome to Coffee and Conversation with Gary Buchanan, Chief Information Security Officer, National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency. Now please welcome INSA Executive Vice President, John Doyon.
Good morning, and welcome to our program. Today, we are pleased to host one of our community's top leaders. But before we begin, a couple of housekeeping notes. If you have questions, and we hope you do, please submit them through the questions box on the right side of your screen. We have nearly 475 registrants for today's program, and I'll do my best to get to as many questions as possible. Also, we're pleased to welcome members of the press to the call today. So this is a reminder that the program is on the record and being recorded. And finally, I'd like to thank our host for today, Microsoft, for their support of this program. We could not deliver this kind of thought leadership without the support of our sponsor partners. And here to introduce our speaker is Giselle Mayel, Account Executive, Intelligence Community, Microsoft. Giselle, over to you.
Thank you, John, and thank you to the entire INSA team for graciously hosting this morning's discussion. I can't emphasize enough how enthusiastic Microsoft is about today's topic, which currently is a critical topic within the federal space. Over the past several years, we've made substantial investments and collaborated closely with our industry and federal agency partners. These partners include the IC, civil sector, and the DoD community as they embark on their journey to zero trust. So you might be wondering, how do we accomplish this? Well, we do so by offering state-of-the-art, highly advanced security solutions that seamlessly integrate within our suite of Microsoft products and tools. Today, it's of paramount importance for us to gain insights directly from our valued NGA partner regarding their mission requirements and the challenges they currently face today. Without further ado, I have the distinct pleasure and honor of introducing today's distinguished speaker, Mr. Gary Buchanan. He serves as the Chief Information Security Officer at NGA, where he holds a pivotal role in the tactical and strategic implementation of NGA's cybersecurity program. Gary oversees a substantial budget of $120 million dedicated to safeguarding NGA's critical missions and information enterprise. In addition to his role as the CISO, Gary also serves as the occupation manager for the cybersecurity workforce, providing guidance and expertise to more than 120 million civilian cybersecurity professionals. Furthermore, he leads diverse workforce, approximately 400 cyber professionals comprising of civilians, contractors, and military personnel, who are stationed at multiple NGA locations across the country. Prior to his current position, Gary served as the Chief of Cyber Integration Division, where he managed NGA's external cyber reporting to the DoD and the Intel community. Gary's dedication to the cybersecurity is evident in his impressive 10-year tenure at NGA, including a notable 5-year joint duty assignment at the National Reconnaissance Office. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Mr. Gary Buchanan.
Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. Thanks, John. Thanks, Giselle, for having me.
Well, thank you, Gary, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation this morning. Glad you could join us. Glad we're on this side of the 1st of October. And talking about a new fiscal year approaching, it's always a good point in time to take a fresh look at priorities for the upcoming year and what lies ahead for NGA and the activities that you're leading as the CISO. So I wanted to ask you, what are your top priorities for the year ahead?
So that's a great question, John. Priorities are really going to start with Executive Order 14028, which came to us about 2 years ago, and then the subsequent NSM 8, which is the National Security Memorandum 8. As many of you know, there are a few things to work on to fully implement the much needed guidance of these documents that will prepare our cyber programs for the future. The item that receives really the most attention is the buzzword or phrase zero trust. This is not a new concept to seasoned cybersecurity professionals. In the past, it's been called layered defense, defense in depth. However, the executive order has renewed the importance and modernized the approach. It is ensuring that we are not simply building higher walls to protect the castle and deeper and wider moats around the castle. Rather, it puts a sentry at every door within the castle with explicit entry lists, and real-time telemetry back to the castle command center. Oh, and everything in the room is invisible without magic glasses that are custom fit for each person that has access to our room. At NGA, as with our partners within the IC, this is not a new concept. Pre 9/11, most of our systems were built this way. We had a very strict need to know premise. Post 9/11, we embraced the need to share concept, and that, along with technology advancements, led to the connections of many stovepipe systems. The connections of these systems, as well as the interconnections of IT throughout the world, and the proliferation of vulnerabilities, exploitations, malware, ransomware, phishing, whaling, has led us back to the basics of protecting our systems and data first. Here at NGA, we started our journey with Zero Trust by doing a comprehensive review of our systems as a whole. We call it our as-is assessment. We took the tenets of Zero Trust, went through our entire enterprise, identifying our current capabilities and gaps. Through this assessment, we developed our 2B architecture and our Zero Trust strategy on its implementation. We're focusing first on enterprise capabilities that all systems at NGA can inherit. Our journey to the advanced level of Zero Trust will not be a sprint, rather it will be a marathon with a few sprints along the way. There are, of course, challenges from my point of view, and we really couldn't have the conversation about doing anything in the government without talking about funding. Funding is always a challenge. However, NGA sees this journey as a cornerstone of its mission, and it's committed to invest in its cybersecurity program. Modernization of legacy workloads and applications is always a challenge. The old saying, if it's not broke, don't fix it. It's an old saying because it's an old saying and does not fit well today in today's threat environment. Just because it's not broke from functionality does not mean it's not vulnerable to be exploited. As soon as we feel the capability, we have to plan on replacing or upgrading it. The old slogan by Ronco that said, set it and forget it, it doesn't really work in the IT world.
Well, thanks. There's a lot to discuss there. And you mentioned the new White House guidance. Well, it's not that new, but the executive order and the NSM. But one thing that is new is some of the guidance we just got. Well, not so much guidance, but the new strategy from the Pentagon on cybersecurity. How do you see, there's a lot for any government agency to absorb, plan, figure out what they're going to do to implement these things. How are you staying agile with, continuing more and more guidance coming at you, and how are you prioritizing what you do? And I think you said, for example, you're going to be looking at for Zero Trust enterprise capabilities first. How's the phasing going to go from there?
So starting with the enterprise capabilities, we build a foundation for all applications and individual systems to fold into. There will be changes that have to be done with certain applications and capabilities, but rather build the foundation before building the roof, and that's what we're trying to do with our capabilities. You really have to have something for folks to plug into, as opposed to if you just take the Zero Trust tenants and you have every program. I have over 1,000 systems that we break down by ATOs, over 1,000 systems at NGA, and if I had each one of them individually do Zero Trust tenants, that would break the bank. So we really have to build that foundation first and have them to be able to tailor their Zero Trust controls into the enterprise baseline.
Okay, let me ask you something you haven't mentioned yet, which is cloud computing. And that's become ubiquitous for how we do our work and our mission. And how are you addressing things like Zero Trust within a cloud computing environment? And does cloud computing, does perhaps the security that comes with that, is that providing yet an additional layer, part of your strategic approach to implementing Zero Trust, and how does that work?
Yeah, so that's a great question, John, and a challenge for us. So from a multiple cloud environment, we have in services within each cloud, which are a little bit different. The native services in Amazon are a little different than the native services in the Microsoft cloud, which is different than Oracle and Google, so on and so forth. The strategy that we have embarked on is bringing all that data to one place. So it's not a matter of what the individual application or the individual service from the cloud, it's the ability to bring it into one environment. So we have worked very hard with our Cybersecurity Operations Center to build an environment for continuous monitoring capabilities where we fold all the different telemetry from the multiple clouds into one place. Our journey has just started with clouds, with multiple clouds. We've had Amazon Cloud for many years. We've begun our cloud journey with both Oracle and Microsoft and look forward to doing that with Google as well.
Great. So I'm envisioning a cyber operations center with all the telemetry coming in, so to speak, and thinking, that that's helping you to maintain awareness, of course, but also, what else are you doing to ensure the resiliency of all these systems as part of your cybersecurity approach?
So there's lots of different pieces that are part of the Cybersecurity Operations Center. So let me just go through a couple of them here. The first, we rely on the constant monitoring capability requirements in accordance with NIST 800-137. And of course, the DoD directive for constant monitoring or continuous ATO. We fold that into another strategy that we developed at NGA called our Information Security Continuous Monitoring Strategy. The goal with that is to automate monitoring and visualization capabilities to the maximum extent possible to deliver near real-time awareness in support of analysis, reporting, and overall risk awareness. We really strive to centralize, correlate, and bring all the information from an organizational wide, all of our security tools and sources to allow for aggregate metrics, analysis, and reporting. And then the last part of that continuous monitoring that is really the important part from, bringing all the data together is obviously important, but you got to be able to do something with it. So continuous monitoring results are supposed to go somewhere and do something with it. So we make sure our stakeholders and decision makers can make better risk decisions, where to apply dollars, where our active threats are, where we can accept risk from a cyber perspective, and where we have to immediately patch the risk or mitigate the risk rather. Secondly, we do analytics service for accuracy and integrity. We analyze data in the context of the stated risk tolerance, potential impacts, data integrity, and overall effectiveness of risk mitigation. We are working to advance our data analytics and adapt outcomes to support accurate reporting, developing new standards, and discovering unexplored trends, patterns, and gaps. And really, I expected a pointed question to us about AI and ML, and this is where it comes into play for the cybersecurity mission. The amount of data that we are bringing in from a cyber perspective is absolutely astounding, right? We are bringing in what I call the 4 V's: variety, veracity, volume, and variety, veracity, velocity, and volume. So our Cybersecurity Operations Center right now has 126 data sources from 4 separate networks that come into it. So that's the variety piece. From a veracity look, there's 745 custom fields within these data sources. We have 70,000 events per second. That's the velocity of the data coming in. And then the volume of it, we have 10 to 20 terabytes per day of data coming into our Cybersecurity Operations Center. Mm-hmm. So if you think about that, that's an astronomical volume of data. And most people are familiar with like a gigabyte of data. Right. 1,000 gigabytes makes a terabyte. 1 terabyte can store roughly 200,000 novels, mm-hmm. or 250,000 photos, or 500 hours of high definition video. We process on average 10 to 20 terabytes of cyber data every day, right? And that number continues to grow. There's new requirements for operations, compliance. You mentioned some of the new things coming out of the DoD. So that number will continue to grow. Soon we're going to reach a petabyte range, which is estimated to be roughly and I like these statistics to put it into people's head who don't just get the terabyte, petabyte thing. We're going to reach the petabyte range, which is roughly 20 million large filing cabinets. 20 million of them worth of data is a petabyte. That's also equivalent to 500 billion pages of printed text. And there isn't a workforce large enough to sift through that level of data every day, which is why we really need artificial intelligence and machine learning for our future.
Great. Well, you know, there's so much being talked about now with generative AI. And in fact, I know as an organization, INSA, we're going to be hopefully talking to some folks about generative AI use cases across the intelligence community at another program later this year. And but I'm thinking now perhaps a use case for that could be exploring the cybersecurity lane, exploring all of the data that you're getting in from all your 126 data sources and everything else you mentioned. Are you starting to play around with some of these generative AI, the large language models, how that might help you find something unusual that you would want to be aware of in your data?
Yeah, we absolutely have. So we started a partnership with some of the national labs to look at this capability within the cyber footprint. We are maturing that capability. I'd love to say it's here right now. It's probably 2 or 3 years off for us internal, but we've been looking at it for the last 2 years, partnering with national labs to do so.
Cool. Well, I'm sure. I know there's also a lot of industry efforts in this lane. So partnering with the national labs, I'm sure you'll be reaching out to industry as well. And perhaps I know NSA and other of your sister IC agencies are dealing with these issues as well. So hopefully there's some collaboration going on there.
There is, absolutely.
Hey, let's move and one of the cybersecurity threats that we face is from China, and I wanted to ask for, you know, from your seat, how has the sort of the evolving landscape of security threats from China impacted you and NGA and its strategies and priorities?
Certainly, beat China was one of the slogans that we heard around here for the last couple of years. China's their capabilities are incredible. They come at our systems every single day, and so as far as the data of how many attacks we're getting from China every day, I don't have that at my fingertips, but again, I know that it's constant, which really brings me to talk about how we defend against China. Keep in mind, my mission with China is really, my mission is with the world to protect NGA's critical infrastructure and to protect NGA's data and systems. So China is one of those threats. There's Russia, North Korea, as well as a host of others that we talk about through cyber threat intelligence reporting with our sister agencies and with the defense industrial base, who are a big help, a big part of getting that total threat picture, again, China being one of them. But really the way that we can defend against China and the way that we can defend against all nation state actors is vigilance, right? At NGA, cyber is the core of our operations. It fuels our ability to source, store, and communicate the geo information that our nation needs. Our adversaries know this, including China, which is why they constantly attack our networks, attempting to degrade our operational capabilities. So we must all embrace that individual responsibility to be cyber defenders if we're going to succeed.
Thanks.
So, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's making me think, you know, of all the different cyber attacks. You know, NSA has its, they work closely with industry, especially the defense industrial base with its cyber collaboration center. They get lots of data from industry partners on the different attacks from across all the range of attacks, including China. And it's just making me think about, you know, you and your seat at NGA, you know, how are you working with industry and collaborating with industry to meet some of your top needs as you tackle cybersecurity challenges?
So from the defense perspective, that's really controlled out of NSA, or I'm sorry, from the DIB perspective, really controlled out of NSA and their CSD, I think it's called, that does all that formal coordination. Now, the coordination that's done through NSA to the Defense Industrial Base includes information from NGA. We have something called the ICSCC, which is the Intelligence Community Security Coordination Center, which collects all those threats, the tips, everything that's going on across the IC in one place. There's also reporting to JFH, Joint Force Headquarters, Doyon, for the same type of information from a DoD perspective. But from the IC perspective, we feed into that. NSA then feeds the rest of the Defense Industrial Base feeds to them, as well as they feed back to that. That's not in our core mission. But from a perspective of industry partnerships and everything that we do with industry, first thing I would say about industry and our work with them is I got to put a plug in. We have a website, nga.mil/workwithus. That is the capability for all of industry to have an opportunity to work with us, and it tells us a little bit about what we're doing. We have a big R BAA, which enables NGA to adopt phased approaches to use multiple contract instruments to target expertise, mitigate risk, and create an innovative environment for developing new capabilities. We also have what's called the Commercial Initiative to Buy, Operational Responsive GeoInt, also Cyborg. This provides a centralized contractual access to emerging commercially available imagery, data, analytic capabilities, and services through the GSA schedule. We're engaging industry through what's called the Geospatial Exchange, and this is really neat. I've had the personal opportunity to deal with some of this, where we have talent exchanges between industry and academia to support our current, future, and projected mission requirements across the agency. Hopefully some folks have heard of that. A lot of new partnerships with industry with our work with what we call Next NGA West. This is our new campus that provides an opportunity to strengthen the framework for NGA's longstanding relationship with the St. Louis region. And we're always pursuing new and creative ways to engage small business to help the agency meet its mission critical needs. The last program that I'll talk about that we have in our work with industry is something called Terraline. Terraline is a collaborative effort between NGA and expert nonprofit groups to produce open source intelligence. Now, that's not specific to cyber intelligence, but it is open source intelligence. And then lastly, from specifically a cyber perspective, we cannot develop, implement, and operate cyber solutions without the valued partnership with industry. Our industry partners, people, and solutions are intertwined in everything we do every day for our mission. In cyber, we strive to be tool agnostic solutions that are flexible for our mission needs. Partnerships amongst vendors is a must if there's never one solution that meets all requirements. Although I got to tell you, some are getting pretty close. I think back 10 years ago, talking to vendors, my first question to a vendor was, what is the time and level of effort required to implement a solution? And how things have changed. Today, one of my first questions is, what is the time and level of effort required to remove a solution? As nothing in cyber technology is forever. And so we have to continue to think about the ever-changing landscape in cyber, the ever-changing landscape in technology, and be prepared not just to install tools, but to pull them out as well.
Well, that's a great segue to an audience question that came in, and we are remind you, you can enter your questions on the questions box that's on your screen. This question's from Scott Lawler, and it's to one of the things you mentioned, Gary, to innovation and working with reaching out to industry to be part of that. And he asked, what's the best way to get innovative tech ideas in front of you and other NGA decision makers that can help you implement your vision faster?
Yes. So the best way is to work through our Office of Contracts. And if you go to that site that I told you about before, the NGA Work With Us, that will give the ability to reach the right people. And I get emails every week that folks that are going to that office, and then they act like a router. And so they'll say, hey, send it over to my office and say, you have an interest in talking to this company and this technology. Right now, my focus is obviously Zero Trust, so certainly interested in those capabilities. We also have current contracts with the folks who provide our computer network defense, who are a great partner to talk to. That's their Transport and Cyber Services contract, as well as our UDS contract, Unified, what does UDS stand for? It's our large IT contract for NGA. Those are great people to talk to as well. If it's not directly through me, it's the folks who are implementing the solutions. Thanks, Scott, for the question. Good to hear from you.
We have a, by the way, we have another question in here. They're starting to really come in now. I guess the they're flooding in. Joe Kerr has a cloud-related question. He goes back, he says, how has the desire to migrate to a multi-cloud architecture changed your security strategy?
Drastically. I'm not sure if your question is as it goes to multiple cloud or cloud in general, so I'll try and touch both of them. So from a cloud in general, it took a lot of our capabilities off-prem, a lot of our hardware solutions off-prem, a lot of the ability to collect, store data changed when we went to one cloud environment. So as opposed to it all being on-prem, now we had to think about where we're putting those, the cyber telemetry for the cloud, as there are, depending on the provider, different cost models for ingesting as opposed to pushing data out of clouds. So that was the first pivot we had to do to our strategy when we went to one cloud. Now going to multiple clouds, there's another pivot, and so where we were getting readily used to the terminology and the capabilities with one cloud and the native services from that cloud, and the cyber folks now, obviously very, very deep in knowledge of our on-prem systems, now learned how telemetry and native services worked in a one cloud system. Now you have to multiply that knowledge by 2, 3, 4. And so really there's a lot more learning that has to be done from a cyber professional's perspective on how other clouds work, how different VPCs work within different service providers. And then the last part of that I'll say is how it's changed the strategy again is we can't do cyber monitoring in 5 different locations. We have to be able to bring it to a centralized location. And how do you do that with multiple classification levels? How do you do that with multiple service providers from a cloud perspective? And how do you make sure that your telemetry is comparing apples to apples? So when you're trying to get the big picture, you're not, saying, well, this is a bad thing with the Amazon cloud, but seeing this telemetry in the Microsoft cloud is not such a big deal. And then Google Cloud, well, we just don't know yet. So it's a lot of learning that we're having to do. But certainly, I would say the biggest part of the multiple cloud is we've realized we can't monitor 5 clouds plus an on-prem environment at 3 different classification levels, 4 different classification levels. So it's really a strategy to bring all the cyber data together to do big data analysis.
Yeah, thinking that we also have a question here. You're talking about all the different systems, multi-clouds and stuff that you and the challenges that you have to face. While those numbers seem pretty large, there are, you also mentioned, Google and Amazon and Microsoft. They have, a couple times even greater, multiple times greater size and scale when you look at their global networks and their global presence and what they have to deal. How can you work how can you, learn lessons from these huge industry leaders and how they have these enormously large, almost incomprehensible challenges for their global efforts. How can you, either learn from them or better understand how they tackle their challenges and maybe get some lessons learned? Are you looking in that lane?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, you can't bury your head in the sand, right? You have to know that you are not the best, and you have to go and seek others' opinions, the way they do things. It may be better, it may be equal, it may not be as good as the way you're doing things. But for many years, we've had partnerships in industry, and I'll throw a couple out that are close to home for me. AT&T is an example. We have been to their security operations center. AT&T is huge, right? So their centralized cybersecurity operations center, lessons learned from them, how they are dealing with the large scale environments that AT&T supports, certainly informs the way that we do it. We've also been to large banking organizations to see how they're providing cyber defense to everything they do as a bank, and that's a big piece, right? If you lose your money, that gets a lot of attention. I'll also say that if you look in the recent news, was it MGM and what was the other, Caesars maybe, that both had a recent hack last week. Certainly have talked with the CISOs at those organizations, partnerships through other organizations. What was the last one? Met them at reInvent a couple years ago, so continue those partnerships there, and learn from what everybody's doing. Everyone has a different, I wouldn't say everyone has a different model. Different organizations have different things to protect in different ways. They also have different risk tolerances, and so you have to understand the big picture, not put your head in the sand, talk to everybody, and that's a lot of my job here at NGA, is not to look down into NGA, it's to look out across the federal government, across industry, and across academia.
Great. Hey, we have another audience question that's come in, and they asked, to what degree is post-quantum on the radar at NGA?
So it's on the radar. I'll say that. So my personal opinion is post-quantum is I think 8 to 10 years out. So let's talk about it a little bit post-quantum. In August this year, Google reported that they had engineered a quantum computer that can execute calculations. I think the term was, it would take them moments to calculate a mathematical equation that supercomputers, it would take like half a century to do. It's 70 qubits is the size of that. And so I'm not going to go into how quantum computing works. It's fascinating how it all works, but 70 qubits, which is pretty large. But I'll take that into what it would take to crack RSA asymmetric encryption. So it's asymmetric encryption is the number one fear with quantum computing. I shouldn't say fear. It's the thought that quantum computing will be able to crack RSA asymmetric encryption, which is what we use every day when you're going to your banking sites. 128-bit and sometimes 256-bit encryption, asymmetric. So in order to crack that, it would take a 20 million qubit system, quantum computer, 20 million qubits to crack that RSA encryption. So we're right now, Google, doing a 70 qubit system. And by the way, if you don't know anything about quantum computing, the way it works, it's very, I hate to say fragile, but it's not something that you can do for long terms. So it's kind of fragile. So I guess where I'm trying to get to there is it on the radar? Absolutely. Things like asymmetric encryption are going to be our biggest issue at first. Symmetric encryption can be mitigated simply by doubling the key size, and so that changes the risk equation there. And then, I guess, lastly, I'll say when we get to a system, so IBM says that they have a 1,000 qubit system that they're producing next year. But when we get to like we have a 1 million qubit system, that's when I'm going to start to be concerned. There's also thoughts of quantum computing used within cyber defenders, and I really like that idea. Seeing a cyber attack as it's forming, I think would be awesome, right? And I hope that's true. The reality I fear is that it's only going to take one human to misconfigure something that renders that quantum defense capability useless. So we need to educate our people on making sure that we're doing things from the right perspective. Thanks for the question.
Sure. Hey, here's another question regarding working with your allies and partners. Given the increasing emphasis on information sharing with allies and partners, how does NGA collaborate with other intelligence and defense agencies, as well as its allies, I guess, and foreign partners to strengthen network defenses and cybersecurity?
So that's a great question, and one that we were actually just talking about yesterday. Every 2 weeks, we meet within all the intelligence community's CISOs have a meeting. We call it the ISRMC. Every month, the larger parts of the IC are brought in, being Marine Corps intelligence, Army intel, NAV intel, the smaller military service of intel, and then so every 2 weeks, it's all of. Geez, I'm messing this up. So every 2 weeks, we call it the Big Five. So that's CIA, NRO, NSA, NGA, and DIA. And then every month, it expands that audience to all of our mission partners within the IC. As I said, MCIA, NAV Intel, Space Force, all that good stuff. So that's every 2 weeks for me. We're collaborating constantly on what are the trends that we're seeing as far as threat intel. We're collaborating on the policies, how we're looking at new policies, how we're trying to support new policies, what we're trying to enforce from an IC level, partnerships with DoD. What else are CIO concerns from the agencies come there, and yeah, so constant collaboration. I have the CISOs from the Big Five. If I'm not talking to them every 2 weeks in that meeting, chances are I'm talking to them on the phone, I'm sending emails, I'm jabbering with them. So really, I would tell you it's a constant communication with other members of the IC, and yeah, throughout the IC.
Hey, we have another audience question here, and someone asks, if given the choice, Gary, would you prefer to add more cyber tools or cyber personnel to your organization?
Oh, wow.
You can't say both.
Yeah, tools or people?
Well, that also gets, while you ponder that, it also gets to, I think, a larger question, which is all around the cyber workforce. How do you build a resilient cyber workforce? And there's a shortage and there's competition. You just mentioned the Big Five. All of your Big Five partners and others want to hire the same type of cybersecurity folks into their organizations. How do you address the workforce side of this and look at what the talent gaps are and how you fill them, and how you basically raise the expertise level for cybersecurity, develop that within the workforce you have?
So I have a great answer to the second one, and I'll try and answer the first question. Tools or people? I would say tools. The challenge with tools is you have to integrate them. You have to get them working, and I would rather have 5 very efficient tools that satisfied 95% of my challenges than 100 tools that satisfy 96% of my challenges. So it's not more tools, it's more effective tools. But if we have the right tools, we could reduce the amount of people required to operate them.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my answers on tools or people. Realizing that bringing tools in requires people to integrate, requires people to train tools, requires people to configure tools and understand what the output from the tools is. So ultimately, if the tools are done right, we could reduce the amount of people. On your second question, I love this question, and I'm so proud of what NGA is doing to answer this question. You're exactly right. We are competing for a limited skill set across, and it's not just the IC that we're competing against, right? It's not just IC and DoD. Cybersecurity is in demand across the world. And so it's really a tough proposition to say, hey, hey, Joe, Mary, we'd love you to come work inside this skiff. Put your phone down. You can't bring that into the building. You want to use the latest and greatest tools? Sorry, we're going to be a little bit behind that. You want to use that tool that you've been using at home that was created in Russia? Sorry, we're not going to be using that tool. It's a tough proposition to get folks to do that, especially younger folks who are fresh out of college and who are excited about their careers. To put them in a windowless building and say, use technology from 10 years ago without being able to do a lot of things that you want to do, that's tough. So how are we addressing that? That's really the question. And this is where I'm really proud of NGA. And it was simply amazing this summer. We've had college interns at NGA for years, and our college intern program is strong. There's lots of opportunities for interns to go through what we call Smart Scholars. That includes having the U.S. government pay for their education in return for service. And that's a great program. But the most exciting thing that I saw this year was in my office, I had 9 high school interns. These are men and women who are in high school, who we got a clearance to come in and work all summer with us. Fresh minds. Fresh hooks, and it would be easy to come in and say, oh, they're in high school, what do they know? We'll have them do mundane type work just to get them through an internship over the summer. But we took a different tact, and the tact we took was, let's show them the most exciting parts of cyber. Let's show them how to do red team engagements. Let's show them how to do phishing attacks. Let's show them how to do active defense of our cloud systems, and then there are pieces that they have to learn as well of the policy ends of it. How do you implement zero trust? What tools and what alternatives of tools do we have to implement certain capabilities we're looking for? So there was a little bit of an engineering aspect in there as well. But the point there was to what I'll call hook them early. Get folks from high school excited about cyber, hopefully pursue a career in cyber, and understand that just because you're hanging your cell phone up, or I'm sorry, you're leaving it in the car, or you're putting it in the lockers when you come in, does not mean it's the end. And talk to them about the benefits of working for the U.S. government or in a contract capacity for the U.S. government. So really excited about that. This was our first year for it. I can't say enough great things about Ian Zafaros from our HD office, who actually got that, or HR office that got that running for NGA. It was spectacular.
That is exciting, and maybe we'll have a chance to talk more about that, because we're always looking at ways to build a stronger intelligence community. That's our tagline here at INSA, and a lot of that's about the workforce and the opportunities in the IC and recruiting people who want to do the work. So, well, Gary, we're out of time, but I'll ask you, do you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to share?
No, I just really, thanks for the time, John, and thanks for Giselle for opening, and thanks to Microsoft for sponsoring this event. Really excited to talk to you, and I think we covered some great questions from the audience, and a lot more covered as well. So appreciate the opportunity to speak, and that's all I have.
Great, and I look forward to seeing you in three dimensions here in person sometime soon.
Yes.
I want to thank you for joining us this morning, and to the audience, I want to thank you as well for joining us this morning and for all the thoughtful insights and questions, or thoughtful questions you had. Very informative discussion. Thanks as well to Microsoft for being our sponsor today. As the webinar ends, there will be a short survey that pops up. Please take a few moments to complete it and let us know how we did. And I'd like to take the last moment here to run through a couple of our upcoming programs. On Tuesday, October the 10th, we'll have another virtual conversation. It'll be a fireside chat with Rear Admiral Tom Hindershett, who's the Indo-PACOM J2. He will share his assessment of China's air, sea, land, space, and cyber capabilities, key intelligence priorities for the command, issues related to U.S. partnerships, and more. Then on October 13th, the INSA Foundation will host a webinar that focuses on gaining information advantage, data, and tradecraft. And the guest will be CIA's Director of the Open Source Enterprise, Randy Nixon, and the Global Head of Intelligence and Executive Protection for McDonald's, Ryan Long. Finally, I'd like to highlight an event NSA hosts each year to recognize outstanding early to mid-career professionals who've already made significant impacts on national security, and that's the INSA Charlie Allen Achievement Awards. These awards recognize emerging leaders from all sectors of the community, whether they're government, military, doing homeland security work, first responders, contractors, industry leaders, researchers, and mentees across the board. Please think about who you might want to nominate for one of these awards and write them up. The awards mean a great deal to the recipients, and it's a great way to recognize excellence. The nominations deadline is the end of October, Tuesday, October 31st. You can learn more about the awards and all of our programs on our website, insaonline.org. This concludes our morning's program. Have a great day.